then we're going to roll it out. And that's when they started coming up with very tangible questions, right? Like, so how do we recruit people to be in our incubator, right? What are the criteria when somebody graduates? Are they staying with us for 2 years, for 5 years, and 6 months, right? So these are the things that they only start realizing once they're about to roll out that program. So first I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that I faced with the project. So first of all, you're going to see that I had a one-member team, and guess who that member was? Yes, me. So how did it happen that way? I don't know if you guys have run into that problem, but sometimes, you know, we're all involved in so many different things, and we sometimes get overcommitted, and sometimes we have to drop certain things, like right before. So that's what happened to one of my team members. So you always have to kind of be in touch with your team and know what's going on with them. If they have any other commitments, and you know, triple, double check with them that they're definitely committed and going to your project. And even for yourself, right? If you feel that you might have something coming up around that time, just make sure you deal with it ahead of time so that you don't have to make last minute, you know, a week before departure changes in your project. Now, next thing that happened was we were supposed to do the project for 3 weeks, but then the huge snowstorm hit New York, and we were sitting there waiting for 4 days for takeoff. You know, just to get there. So that just gives you a little bit of an idea. You know, it's international travel, you're traveling to developing countries, anything and everything can happen, so just be kind of open-minded, flexible, and you know, also work with your key contact person to be able to, you know, kind of restructure the project last minute if you do have to, if you run into of these kinds of issues. Now, once we got there, my husband was accompanying me, so just to keep me company there. It was pretty unbelievable because, well, it was great to work with an organization that Taylor already worked with, because they already knew what to expect from us. They knew what kind of level of documents we can deliver, so I had huge shoes to fill. Thank you, Taylor. And we just got right down to work, right? So as Taylor mentioned, meeting the key stakeholders is very important, so know everybody in the organization that you're working with, so next time you don't have to bug your key contact person, oh, can you take me to Martha because I would like to get some documents that she had. You can just go and knock on her door and be like, hi, I need this. First of all, organization really appreciates that. They see you becoming part of the team, you know, have lunch with them, have kind of informal interactions with them. That way you will realize that, especially, you know, in these countries, a lot of important conversations do happen, you know, over coffee, over lunch, stuff like that. So social interaction is extremely important, and it's also going to make your job a lot easier, right? You're there just basically making new friends, right? So next step was for us to visit all the nearby communities, because we had to identify the businesses that will be suited to become part of the pilot project, right? So they were absolutely clueless on how to select those people, and we basically decided that it'll be best to select a kind of an established cooperative or a business, because having a pilot project with 5 brand new ventures is just way, way too risky, right? It just can flop. So we wanted to ensure that we kind of have some level of security, that these are established businesses and they're going to be successful with the resources that we can offer them. So going in the field and meeting people, I really hope that all of you guys will get to do that in your projects. And just from the description that I've read, it seems like you'll be pretty engaged with the communities. First of all, it's an amazing opportunity. You're not going to get to experience that if you're just going there, you know, on vacation, surfing on the beach, and then, you know, going back home. You're really going to understand the kind of social economic issues that these people are facing, and that's why, you know, I strongly encourage you to have those interactions as much as possible, because it's going to definitely give your project deliverables a very kind of authentic taste that this is something that you've learned just being there, you know, seeing how people behave. One anecdote from that was we were visiting agriculture co-ops, and, you know, it's like full day of me just talking to farmers after farmers after farmers, and at some point you just run out of questions, and you're like, so what kind of innovation have you done lately? And they're like, oh, we have this amazing new water pump, and you're just so excited for it, right? So, but you know, this is what you got to do. You're working with a client, and you really want to kind of understand what is it that makes them tick, right? If the water pump is not the most exciting thing in your life, you know, step into their shoes. For them, this is great stuff. And then, you know, we would kind of roll up in this car, and the farmers would have to stop working, so they kind of looked at this as being slightly annoying, right? You have to talk to this lady who's, you know, doesn't know what she wants from us, she's just asking all these random questions. And then at one co-op, they're like, oh, hey, have you ever, you know, worked the land and stuff? I'm like, sure. They're like, oh, do you want to try? And they gave me this digging thing device, I'm not even sure what to call it. And they're like, try it. And I see like 15 of them kind of looking at me, so what is she going to do, right? And I'm like, okay, sure. So I roll up my sleeves and I, you know, do the thing. They were so impressed. I mean, we spent like the next half an hour, and I did this for like, I don't know, 40 seconds. I mean, it was fun, right? But then, you know, that kind of, you know, broke the ice, and we talked a lot about the issues they're facing, that, you know, their kids have to work with them after school, but then on the other hand, that keeps them away from, you know, getting mixed up with drugs. So, you know, you start all these conversations just by being willing to put yourself in the position of, I'm actually here to work with you guys and help you, as opposed to I'm just here with my notepad to take notes and, you know, observe you. That's what I've been doing for 2 weeks. It was pretty intense because, like you mentioned, 3 or 4 weeks is a very short time, 2 weeks is a super short time. So I definitely want to make sure that I give them as much information as possible. So I just narrowed down the scope and focused on a couple of things. Number one, how do you select people for your pilot project? And I've met some co-ops, and that's why I made some recommendation. I recommended like 3 out of the 5 total that they're going to have, and you know, the last 2 they're going to figure out themselves, but at least they know what kind of organizations they should be having as their pilot project. Next, I talk about mentorship program for those entities being in their incubator. The program that Taylor mentioned, the PIBV incubator here at Wharton, I started a little business last summer, and I was accepted into it. So I knew exactly what, you know, mentorship program was like here, but of course you always have to kind of tweak it and explain that, oh, you know, any basically a relevant person in the community with entrepreneurial experiences who have started their own businesses before can be helpful. And they're like, really? They don't have to be, you know, like a super, like, I don't know, mayor of the community who like mentors you and follows up with you? I'm like, no. As long as they have relevant experience to share, you know, that's fine. So laying out those, you know, best practices, also explaining how could you work with professionals in your local community, right, the lawyers, the accountants, explaining that perhaps even if the company can't pay them right now, you know, later on if they're still using their services but they're growing, you know, they can start paying them a little bit more than the market rate. So, you know, communicating these types of professional relationships that they were not necessarily, you know, considering for their program, but now they're thinking, oh, I think, you know, I know an accountant who would love to give back to the community and work with these guys. So it was definitely kind of, you know, eye-opening for them. And of course, the last thing that I did indicate some milestones for the incubator, right? So when should you have reviews of those ventures that you're incubating, right? What does that review consist of? What kind of milestones do they have to reach? For example, in Guatemala, as opposed to the United States, you know, here as soon as you form your company, you're supposed to incorporate it and get all the legal stuff out of it. But in Guatemala, you actually have to start selling, start doing business, and then you bring your like 6 months worth of the receipts, and then you register your company with the government. So it's, you know, it's a totally different business process, and it's very important to understand those differences and tweak your requirements to basically the community that you're operating in. And finally, you know, I gave them the PowerPoint presentation. I created a bunch of forms that they can use later on. And, you know, your job is basically to be very frank and honest with them. And, you know, just like Taylor said, I had to explain to them that they will not be able to create, you know, the University of Pennsylvania working type of incubator, but this is what they can do, and this is going to be amazing because there's not much like this in, you know, Central America going on currently. So they're definitely onto something. They live in a very strong community with good candidates for that type of program. So I think the bottom line is to, you know, make sure you create those personal relationships. Make sure you have very structured workflow, even though you have to tweak it sometimes, you know, as long as the overall framework is there, that's the most important thing. And lastly, every deliverable that you're working on, try to picture how the organization is going to be using it after you're gone. If you see them only, bringing it up once in a while when, somebody visits their university and wants to hear about some of the programs they have, and they like pull up this dusty PowerPoint, then it's probably not the right thing, right? But you want them to be able to like click print button, take the paper, and like give out the form or use it right away. So yeah, and definitely a lot of work went into that, and specifically because I didn't have a large team. But at the same time, I think you can definitely do a lot in a short period of time, especially because it makes us realize the knowledge that we have that people in other countries just don't have access to that, market and finance and so forth knowledge. So yeah, I'm excited for you guys. It's going to be amazing. Questions? Okay, so I'll let Rachel speak that up for now.
Hi folks, so the project that I worked on last winter was with an NGO in Nairobi called Zana Africa. Am I standing wrong? Okay. Wharton had a pre-existing relationship with this